very warm welcome to moneycontrol.com. The resilience of the youngest mountain range in the world, the Himalayas, is being tested. India's hill towns are in peril. Joshimath is sinking. Alarm bells were raised by the residents of the area when they saw cracks appear in their homes. And since then, the Joshimath issue has been making headlines, and rightly so. Alarm bells are ringing. Finally, scientists are saying that we have been raising the red flag for a very, very long time. What went wrong in the development policies of the state of Uttarakhand? Extreme landslides have become frequent and intense in the Himalayas. A study found that there were 27 major landslide events between 1880 and 2015, of which one third happened between 2001 to 2015. Uttarakhand, when it became an independent state in 2000, it set itself a goal to become the hydro powerhouse to India, much, much like what Himachal Pradesh has become. And since then, there have been protests and there have been implications for the unscrupulous development that has gone on in the state. Joining me to discuss and decode the Joshimath issue, I have with me my colleague Shweta Goswami from Money Control, who tracks the energy sector, and she has been in touch with NTPC, whose plant is in question here right now. We have with us Dr. C Kuniyal, Head Center for Environment Assessment and Climate Change. We've got him on his way to Joshimath. His team is there studying the situation on ground, and they are coming up with a report on what really went wrong in Joshimath. And we have with us Mr. Devinder Sharma, who's joining us from Mohali. He's a food policy analyst, researcher, and writer. He's an agri-scientist who's done a lot of work in Himachal Pradesh, and we are hoping to get a perspective from him on the policies that could have been implemented better in the state of Uttarakhand. Let me begin with Shweta right now. Shweta, you have been tracking and you've been in touch with NTPC. NTPC's plant, the Tapovan Vishwagar Hydro Project, has been a bone of contention in the area. A lot of experts have said that this is the power project that has been responsible, if not completely, partially, for what we are seeing in Joshimath. Tell us more.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. And yes, so I'll just briefly talk about this project, hydroelectric project. This is a 520 megawatt hydroelectric project, which was the construction for which started in around 2006. And it was supposed to be completed in 2013, and it is already not almost, it is actually 10 years delayed. And this has been the main contention has been because it's a hydroelectric power plant project. It is supposed to, there's a head race tunnel that is always built in all hydroelectric power project. And this is what this tunnel is exactly what is the bone of contention here, where the residents and experts are saying that building this tunnel has kind of disturbed the ecosystem of Joshimath and actually in almost all of Chamoli district, right? This is NTPC coming to NTPC stand. NTPC is completely washing off its hands from this whole we can call it calamity, right? It is saying that its tunnel has nothing to do with the Joshimath incident, as it is almost, from what I got to know from sources in Power Ministry and NTPC, is that the fact that they've stated to the inquiry committee that has been set up by the PMO is that the tunnel, this particular tunnel, is around 1 kilometer away from Joshimath city, and it is 600 meters deep. So they are kind of trying to state that it's far away, 1 kilometer is far away from Joshimath, right? So this is where the facts remain. And I just want to highlight one important point again. This plant has already been hit several times, not just by residents' protests, but also by natural calamities. In 2013, when the Kedarnath flood happened, 10 hydroelectric power plants in Uttarakhand were affected. and majorly damaged. In this Tapovan Vishnugarh project was one of them. In 2021, when the Chamoli district floods happened, two hydroelectric power plants, power projects got affected, and this one was the one which was most majorly damaged, and almost 200 workers died in this tunnel. So these are the plain facts that currently we all have, and as far as my sources say, it's going to take a few weeks, but hydroelectric projects in the country are not going to stop anytime soon. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Shweta, for that update. So clearly, the government has taken notice. The Prime Minister's office has called for a meeting, multiple meetings, in fact, with the Power Ministry. And as Shweta was saying, the government is taking steps to boost ecology. And let me bring in Dr. Kuniyal here. Dr. Kuniyal, you've done so much work and so much research on ground on this issue. What's your assessment of what we are seeing in Joshimath right now? A lot of experts have been saying this was a long time coming. Scientists had been raising red flags on this, the kind of development that's been going on, the hydropower projects. So there were several warnings that were ignored. What's your assessment and reading of the situation at the moment?
Yeah, thank you very much. And actually, you see, I feel that there is no single factor affecting the, sinking of Joshimath. There could be multiple factors. If suppose I talk about the physical, as I have already always I mentioned that the topography is very loose, and Joshimath and other hill towns are located on very loose material, loose soil. So, as a result of that, subsurface activities and above surface activities, what are going on? To understand these phenomena is very, very important. Under subsurface phenomena, if suppose I highlight the drainage system, drainage pattern, subsurface water, and aquifers, so these could also be disturbed. If suppose above surface I speak, then there we should mention about the activities, whatever the human activities are there. In that terms, floating population and the construction of buildings and vehicular influx, all these are also having the load over the land. If suppose you remember during peak season, and there is a large influx of visitors. So my more concern is to assess the carrying capacity based studies, and through which we can highlight that how much floating population, how much residential population, how much stories of the buildings could be there, so that the load over the loose soil or loose material from where the Himalaya come up could be lessened, and such type of events we can keep far away. So this
So,
is my major concern to understand.
oh, Dr. Kunyal, I want to ask you. So you said that construction, one is the topography of the area. It's made on loose soil. It's the youngest mountain range in the world. You've spoken about construction. You've spoken about vehicular activities. So clearly, population is a concern. But in this specific case, we have been talking about the Tapovan project. Do you
My team is already working on all these issues, ecological issues, and I am also on the way to Joshimath. Let us see. We will also assess whether its impact is there or not. But it is very early to say and to comment on any of the single factor. So that's why I emphasize that we will also study that's impact very soon, and then we will be in a position to have a cumulative, decision. What are the causative factors in the region?
Okay. Okay, we'll come back to you, Dr. Kuniyal. Let me bring in Mr. Sharma here. Mr. Sharma, as Dr. Kuniyal pointed out, that we've seen unscrupulous development in the state. I want you to talk a little bit about the development policies. Clearly, I mean, all the hotels that have come up in the area, all the homes that have come up in the region, they must have taken clearances. Policies have must have enabled them to build, and in this particular case, the hydropower project also has gone through all the clearances. So where have we gone wrong in this?
Well, the first law for ecology, as someone has said, means that everything is related to everything else. We need to understand. So when the NTPC says we are miles away from Joshimath and so on, I think we need to follow that first law of ecology, which says that you just can't wash your hands off saying that you are so many kilometers away, or you are not responsible for the crisis. What we are witnessing in Joshimath, it's very clear to all of us that it has now come as an eye opener to what exactly environmentalists were talking about all these years. That fragile hills should not be disturbed the manner they were being disturbed. We all know that Himalayas are a fragile mountain range, and there is a carrying capacity. Beyond that, we cannot upset the kind of environmental balance or equilibrium that exists in those mountains. But successively, we have done away with those policy and tried to push in bigger projects, whether it's hydropower, whether it is the roads being widened to an extent. And I'm actually very happy that that Mount Everest is not in India. Otherwise, I'm sure successive ministers would have been very happy saying we are building up a four-lane highway to Mount Everest also to build up the kind of tourism interest. The point I'm trying to make is that we have to be away from these kinds of attraction that have driven our responses in the last few years that we have seen. More importantly, despite the warnings being sounded by policymakers and experts and scientific experts and as well as environmentalists. Now, Joshimath example is very clear before us. Joshimath is not the only town. We hear that a lot of places around Joshimath are also impacted. We also know that for last 50 years, at least for 40 years, 48 years, the scientists have been warning. There have been expert groups saying that this shouldn't be done, and yet we went on ignoring those kinds of warning to foresee or to reach a level when we see a town now sinking. And this is, of course, a very important message for all of us. And I think we need to redraw policies to see that this doesn't happen again. There are studies which tells us, as a study done by the Vedi School of Policy, it tells us very clearly that since March 2020 till today, there have been about 133 amendments in the environmental laws, and all trying to scrap through what was the no-go policy earlier, or something like that. We said that these hills should not be tampered with, and we have made amendments because we want to relax those laws and the relaxation to allow the bigger industry to move into the mountains. I think this is something that we should be very watchful. And to my understanding, this disaster that we see is actually created in New Delhi, and we can go on saying that this region was not, or what should I say, was not really fit for these kinds of projects. But I think the people who designed those projects also need to take on responsibility for the disaster that we see now beginning to happen.
Okay, let me bring in Dr. Kuniyal here. Dr. Kuniyal, I want to get your thoughts in.
Yes.
Now, as Mr. Sharma has also pointed out, that the kind of development policies that have been carried on, big roads, power projects. Now, one would say that these are essentials for development. We want power to be there in hill towns. We want accessibility to be there in hill towns. So, how does one draw the fine line between ensuring that the road reaches the last mile, that connectivity reaches the last mile, and yet does not destroy the ecological balance of the place?
You see, always sustainability is very, very important. Because why I am saying and referring these things, that we need also road, we need also hydropower projects, and we need livelihood options for the mountain people. So, in view of that, to what extent we are, getting out of the nature, so that line needs to be redrawn to which I have already mentioned that the carrying capacity is very, very important in every aspect, whether it is tourism, whether it is biodiversity, whether it is land carrying capacity, or whether any other things, because there is a limit. If suppose we develop all these things within that limit, after understanding all this, geology and geography of a region, then I think that we can, minimize this load over these mountain towns or mountain spots. And then what will happen? Our economy will also keep on, and our development in a mid path way will also keep on, and there will be sustainability. If suppose you talk about the projects, and because as I have told you that after assessing all these aspects in the region, then we can say, or we can indicate or identify that this and that factor is more important or this is less important. But never anybody can't claim that this is the only factor. So this will not be a scientific reason. The scientific reason is to assess all these parameters, and then we will come to the conclusion. Then what are the dominating factors and which are less dominating factors.
Okay. So how definitely it is an alarming situation right now. How much time do we really have? And I want Mr. Sharma also to weigh in on this. We've had several analyses. A lot of reports have been put together on this. So clearly, right now, the question seems to be that, okay, what does a government push for? Does it push for development? Does it push sustainable development? Of course, is priority. How do we move on from here? As in, what are the next steps that you would recommend that the government should undertake on an immediate basis? Let me pose this question to Mr. Sharma, and then we can come back to Dr. Kuniyal on this.
Well, I think let's be very clear that yes, there is no denying that we need development, but at the same time, we need to protect the ecology. So there can be no conflict here. We need to protect the ecology because eventually that is going to determine what development actually meant. Because after all, development is for the masses. And if the masses have a problem emanating from that process of development, I think we need to rethink if that development pathway is correct or not. Why I'm saying this is, if you look at the kind of expansion that is taking place over for the highways that are being built and so on and so forth, we also know that in the Char Dham project, which is of course very important for various reasons, we know that the Char Dham project, the way the scientific advisory committee's recommendations were ignored, and the way the chairperson of the Supreme Court's appointed science committee or the experts committee, he had to resign in disgust, clearly tells us that there is all effort to circumvent the law, circumvent the provisions that should be existing for the as far as the policies are concerned. New Delhi cannot wash its hands off. I know it is sometimes very, very shocking when I hear an environment minister saying that his table is very clean. I mean, I'm sure his table should be loaded with papers if he is to look into all the environmental impact assessment studies and so on and so forth, rather than he should be claiming that his table is very clean. Does it mean that he's only a clearinghouse? I think the message becomes very, very clear. And why is that we are into a kind of environmental serious crisis that we see in the Himalayas now, and eventually we will start seeing it in other parts of the country also. Look at the Aravalis, for instance, near Gurgaon. Look at the way the Aravalis have been encroached upon. We all see huge reports coming out, both scientific as well as from the experts, that this is not the right way to move forward. We are going to have desertification entering into New Delhi and the Haryana region and so on. But where is the concern? Who is translating that concern into action? The point I'm trying to make is that if that is quote unquote development, I think we need to look at what development means. Now, when we come at the Himalayas, if you look at the government telling us that we need these hydro projects because we need electricity in the region, that's okay. We all agree with that. But to say that we can't do without these hydroelectric projects. I think we should be very clear that the stage will come when we will, of course, not have any provisions left to do much more or expand these networks, because we have actually gone in the wrong way. 77 hydroelectric projects were to come up, and then Supreme Court reduced it by at least 27, thank God. And imagine if all those hydroelectric projects, the run of the river kind of projects that at one time we were very proud of, now we don't want to talk about it. The point I'm trying to make is we need to see the long-term impact of these projects before we try to push it, in the name of a development. And also, it's very interesting, if you go to Himachal, just a minute, Shweta, if you go to Himachal and Uttarakhand, we normally hear that development is for the people. But why is that people are migrating in droves to the plains from the mountains? Look at Uttaranchal, many villages have become ghost villages. Look at Himachal Pradesh, the kind of migration that I see in Himachal Pradesh is also phenomenal. On the one hand, we have these development projects coming up. In fact, the mega development projects coming up. And on the other hand, people are migrating to the plain area. So that clearly tells us that there is a kind of a mismatch. So what kind of steps we need to take? Of course, we can talk later about it.
Okay. No, I wanted to ask you if did we, and let me bring in Dr. Kuniyal also on this, on the Char Dham project. Was there there has been a lot of controversy and discussion around it now. What's your assessment? What's your scientific view on the Char Dham project?
For my concern, you see, when I was studying in 12th, I used to travel 35 kilometers from my hometown to the main road, from where I had to catch the bus. And still, the condition of that road is still, I could say, not so good. So why I am saying that I again refer that we need also roads. Nobody can neglect that we don't require road. But my concern is what type of road we should prefer, so that we can be in between development as well as ecology. So everything is essential. One day, what happens? One gentleman came into my room, and the summer was with around 37 degrees centigrade. Then he was saying that hydropower projects should not be developed. Okay, I just switch off the fan. Then I told him, do we need hydropower projects or not? We need the project. We need roads. We need development. But to what extent? That is my criteria. After all these developmental aspects is for the betterment of the quality of human beings. Why I should be debarred? If suppose I am the inhabitants of the Himalaya, and why I should be debarred from road? So in between, I would say that there is a requirement of sustainable development. We need road, we need hydropower projects, we need tourism, we need hill agriculture, we need horticulture. But to what extent? There should be a carrying capacity study, a line from where we should stop ourselves and understand the parent material of the rocks as well as the atmospheric environment, because of the glaciers and all these things, climate change issues. So based on this, we can suggest the guidelines to the government. And the government usually, if suppose you remain active in following guidelines, I think that to what extent they are following, that is important. So I think that our mandate is same, our institute's mandate is same, to ensure ecological as well as economic security in the Indian Himalayan region. So based on this philosophy, I would say that we need a sustainable development, and people have to also be aware of this, because it is not single man's responsibility. At the same time, we people are also responsible. All the stakeholders will have to be very, very responsible, through which we can demarcate a line from where we should not go beyond. So then I think that it will be a balanced development.
Okay, let me bring in Shweta here. Shweta, what's the government point of view on hydro projects? And yes, we do need roads, do need infrastructure to come in, but as Dr. Kuniyal is also pointing out, that it needs to be done in a sustainable manner. Is there a sense that things might have been rushed up a little bit? Maybe a lot of attention to detail wasn't. I mean, such sustainable development details were ignored in the execution of the project.
Project. We all know in COP27 and even in COP26, the India has made the promise of or has decided on the target of achieving 500 gigawatts of renewable energy capacity by 2030, right? So now solar and wind, we have kind of established a kind of a hold, right? But the problem with solar and wind, which the government has found out, is that it is very intermittent. The supply of power through renewable energy sources such as solar and wind is very intermittent. So to offset that intermittency during peak loads, because our country's peak demand is increasing almost at a rate about 11 to 13% annually, which is very high. And this is like pre-COVID data. I mean, post-COVID data. So, to meet that whole deficit of power, electricity supply in a more sustainable manner, because I know till 2030, India is going to put some thrust on coal, but still the idea is to reduce the dependence on coal gradually. So, which is why they're pushing on hydro. So, the idea is when solar and wind are not able to supply electricity, that is during nighttime peak hour or say during monsoons, then they want the hydro is kind of a more static electricity provider. So this is one major reason why they are pushing for so many hydro projects at one go, and they're actually rushing. It's also because of the NDC target or the COP27 climate change commitment that they have made of 500 gigawatt till 2030. This is the basic context why they are kind of pushing for hydroelectric power projects. And it is ironical, yeah, because it is kind of adversely affecting all the hilly areas.
Yeah. As Shweta was also pointing out, that India's power needs are so enormous right now that we have to accelerate across all levers, whether it's hydro, whether it's thermal, whether it is renewable, and that's one aspect of it. And we need to get connectivity going, but we need to do it in a sustainable manner. That's what Dr. Kunyal has also pointed out. So very quickly, let me just get Mr. Sharma to come in here on his concluding comments on suggestions for the Uttarakhand government and for the central government on the next steps, the way forward from here on.
First of all, Shweta, I think it is very clear to all of us that there has to be a line drawn. But that line is very blurred. When we say sustainable and then we say there is a need for the country to do it. And so there is a very blurred line which we have seen is often encroached on the wrong way, in the wrong direction. So that is the reason why we have a kind of a crisis that is building up when we go in for mega development projects in the mountains or elsewhere also in the world. Now, interestingly, there are lobbies also which try to create a kind of a confusion among the peoples, as to what is good or what is bad. I remember an article written by a very senior journalist in one of the major newspapers saying, why are we worried when the glaciers are melting? We shouldn't worry. What is their use? Look at that. When these kinds of articles appear, so they tend to create a kind of confusion in the reader's mind as to what is the level of development to which we can go up to. That is one. Secondly, having said this, that I'm so glad that our colleague talked about the COP 26, 27, and also we need to look into the COP 15 also, which finished recently as far as the biodiversity was concerned. The global biodiversity framework was evolved. The parameters being laid there and the kind of development process that we are undertaking in India are both at conflict. Or it's very strange that on the one hand, Germany is now saying that we are going to get away from this policy for biofuels, as an alternative fuel mechanism. And whereas India is saying we need to really go into biofuels. So one country is going out and we are still getting into it. The point I'm trying to make is, are we 10 years back or 10 years behind what is happening globally, or the kind of change that the globe is now looking into in the light of climate emergency that the world is already in? So I think we need to be very clear about that, that if we want to go on with that climate emergency worsening year after year, then I think we can, of course, go for that kind of vikas that we all talk about. But there has to be a line drawn, and very clear line drawn. For instance, there are studies which said clearly that in the winters, the snow line should not be disturbed. Beyond that, the height, we should not be taking mega development projects. Even in the case of Char Dham project, we know that it was a 800-kilometer, program or plan, and where the environmental impact assessment is for every 100 kilometers. That's the kind of thing. But very cleverly, that project was divided into 53 parts, so they can avoid getting the EIA give a verdict on the entire project. So the point I'm trying to make it is very clear how these are being distorted, the kind of laws and regulations that the country needs to follow. Your point as to what needs to be done, I have just to say that we need to move from the GDP kind of assessment that we have been making, go into now a gross environmental product also. We need to see what the mountains can carry and what the mountains can deliver. This feeling that, oh no, the country's GDP needs to go up, I think is okay. But I think that obsession, we must get out of it if we really want to really answer the issues that we are talking about as far as climate emergency is concerned. What use, Sweta, I think we need to answer after, let's say, few years, if the Char Dham project, if the dhams, are affected by the climate, the kind of environmental damage that we are seeing now, I think what is the focus of pushing more and more people to travel to the Char Dham projects or Char Dhams. So I think it is time, as was mentioned earlier, that a line should be clearly drawn. Then the economic model A. Then I think some accountability must go to the successive environment ministers. The reason is committees, they give this response, or they give the kind of verdict, but eventually it is the government which takes the call, and I think they cannot wash their hands off. If there is a kind of environmental disaster happening, somewhere we need to start questioning the environmental ministers' roles also, because that's the role the government tries to promote.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Sharma. Dr. Kuniyal, let me quickly bring you in here. What are the other cities, according to you, that are vulnerable at this point, and that could go the Joshimath way if we do not take action fast? Very quickly, I want you to wear a scientist hat and just tell us.
So actually, we should, take the lessons from alike in subsidences or incidences, and based on that, I think that our prime duty becomes to to provide the guidelines to the government, and as a scientific way, in a scientific way. And my job is not to blame anyone from here. If suppose I blame, the blame goes to from grassroots level to top level. We should not do like this. We all are responsible, I think that. But the thing is, there is communication gap in between. If suppose I say one owner don't build 4 or 5 story houses, would he be agree? So, and at the same time, so then we can frame such type of things. If suppose I say to some individual, don't burn waste openly, and how much that individual is convinced about that. So
really
these are some of the issues.
Sure. No, I want you to talk about the hill cities and hill towns that you think are in danger right now. Is Shimla in danger? Is Nainital in danger? Are we looking? These are the places where Indians go to for holidays, for reprieve, and if they are in danger, it's a cause of great worry. In your assessment, in your studies analysis, what are the cities that you feel are very vulnerable at this point?
So actually, I would say that you see, you first carry out such carrying capacity studies. If some towns have done, that's very good. If not done, they should go for that. And based on that, then we should stop our activities on the certain town. As a result of that, what will happen that we will lessen the burden on this topography, and we can also decentralize, and we can go for in a pre-planned way. If suppose I want to develop a town, then its accommodation, its inflow, east vehicular inflow, all should be before, prior, we should be fix it, then we should allow it. It's a best example, I would say, that sometimes the court, honorable courts have, intervened. And Rohtang Pass is one of the best cases. And I have worked a lot in that. And nowadays you can see Rohtang Pass. There is a regulation and only 1200 vehicles are allowed. And whereas in my study, I found that 3000 vehicles were passing in a day. So likewise, we need also development. We need under regulation. So, but based on scientific studies, it should not be that I have said this, we have said this. We must have a scientific base, and based on that, then we can approach the government. So this is the best way of doing. And being
Okay.
the Institute of Policy and its implications, and I think that our job is that, rather than we say that this individual has done this or that has done that. It is a
Sure.
cumulative. It is a
Absolutely.
social obligation of every individual, I think, whether I am scientist, whether a common person, or our honorable ministers, whoever you want to say. So it
Sure.
is a cumulative impact. We should
Sure.
work under an umbrella. So this is a sustainable approach again. How we should go forward from human
Okay.
perspective as well as ecological perspective. That's my concern.
Great. So development has to follow a human perspective and ecological perspective, and the India needs to follow a sustainable development trajectory. A lot of the policies that remain on paper need to be implemented. Dr. Kuniyal gave a fantastic example of Rohtang Pass, which is actually built for 12 vehicles at a time, and around 3,000 vehicles cross that pass every day, and which in itself is is a red flag. So
Very good example. Yes, very
yeah,
good example. And today I received the photographs from my well-wishers from Rohtang Pass. Then I become happy. And that was the day when the people were saying that I have done this or we have done this. So because scientific studies have its implications on the government, that I want to say.
absolutely. So the
When sorry,
government
when
takes
Rohtang
cognizance of
Pass,
the science. Yes, yes, Mr.
Yeah, please.
Sharma, go on.
Yeah, yeah.
I remember Rohtang Pass, of course, is a very good example. And so somebody coming from Himachal Pradesh, I must say that it was becoming like a Delhi market. The way the traffic was being regulated there. But I'm glad that the National Green Tribunal acted on this. And when the National Green Tribunal acted on this, believe me, the government was not happy. Many people, secretaries and the ministers would tell me, from Himachal Pradesh, this is not the right kind of a decision that the government has, that the court has taken. So what I'm saying is the people who should be deciding, who should be actually delivering the kind of a safe environmental message, were actually unhappy when the NGT acted on that. So there is a conflict here which is very clear. So we need strong regulations, is what I'm trying to say, and it involves across the different stages of the governance.
Absolutely.
So
Thank you.
in this context, if you allow me,
Sure.
again you see the case of Valley of Flowers. Valley of Flower is one
Yeah.
of the having a trekking region of around 15 kilometer, okay, from Gobind Ghat to Ghagaria, and there is one type of regulation is there within itself in Gurudwara. If suppose you have accommodation of 1200 people, they will allow only 1200 people. If suppose you have accommodation of 1000 people, they will allow only 1200 people. So there is no, I'm telling in this way, if suppose we work together, I think that there will be, I'm very optimistic, there will be some of the positive impact. Every individual, every society is responsible. If suppose I say in that way, we should work under an umbrella. That's the important point. But how that will be possible only when we become aware of the people, when we make capacity building programs, and our institute does it. We are doing this. We are trying hard to convince the people.
Okay, well, thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Mr. Sharma. Thank you very much, Dr. Kuniyal, and thank you very much, Shweta, for that perspective. I think we covered a lot of ground here. We understood why Joshimath is in the situation it is in, and we also set out the path forward. And the one clear message is that the government cannot ignore the scientific community. Everyone wants development, but we have to be mindful about the weight and the load carrying capacities of these very, very sensitive regions. Thank you very much. We'll keep chasing the story on moneycontrol.com. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Namaste.
Thank you.